Good morning, everyone. Welcome to A is for Alentejo today. I was super excited to see everyone here today. And our special thanks to all of you who've been here for a lot of our other seminars. This is the close, unfortunately, of our 6th annual Full Circle Beverage Conference. Today is our 8th and final seminar. Evan, I think the tears come in, right?
Yeah, that's right. That was why I was doing that. I realized I had no Kleenex.
Absolutely. We want to thank everyone, all our sponsors, you guys in the audience for just engaging with us with your comments, tasting feedback, and for just simply being here. We ask really for your support now. As you end the conference with us, please fill out the conference surveys because we've seen dwindling numbers of people responding to the surveys. Every single sponsor is very important. And by filling out the surveys, it helps our sponsors understand whether or not these seminars are insightful for you and helps us bring more engaging content from regions and wineries to you. Before I pass the baton to Evan to start our session today, we have an important announcement to make, which is why I'm coming on before Evan as the CEO of this company to share our further thoughts from the brief statement that I made the first week of our conference. And I'm referring to the New York Times article on sexual harassment involving some of the members of the Court of Master Sommeliers. For those of you who joined us for the happy hour after that Chilean session the first week, it was a very profound, it was a very cathartic community for me, and I know it was for many people, and it inspired us at Full Circle to come up with a few different initiatives. Almost 3 weeks have gone by, and we want to make sure that our words and our anger doesn't just get forgotten from here and beyond. And then we really need to turn these words into action. And for us, we truly applaud the bravery of the women who stepped forward. What I think it was very important what they did was they brought about this change here in our industry. And right now we're able to produce and present 3 actions that build on the momentum of what these women have ignited. So number 1, Full Circle and Master the World will adopt a zero tolerance policy when it comes to sexual discrimination and harassment. Going forward, this applies to not only our events online and on site, that's the obvious ones. If you ever see anything there, if you ever experience anything there, please come to me directly, Evan, or any of our staff. But it also is a conscious decision that we will apply to when we choose our suppliers, our winemakers, our vendors, and the clients whom we choose to work with. And Evan and I are not big Instagrammers. You can see where we are on Instagram. And so we will tell you head on that you're not going to find big statements from either of us on Instagram, on social media, Facebook, or Twitter. That said, both this statement that I'm posting here and Evan's statement about the recent scandal will be found and can be found at our company websites. At the end of my remarks, I will add that link to the chat so that you can easily get to it. The second thing that we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to keep producing wine education in a very accessible way. We know that many of you have lost your jobs, restaurant jobs out there, at least during this pandemic, or have diminished incomes during the pandemic. We want to highlight that we have a scholarship program at our website, mtwwines.com, where you can apply to receive kits even after this free conference is over. We will be building more bridges with corporate suppliers to enhance our scholarship program, and we will make more kits available to somms and others who want to hone their palates. And this honing of palate is regardless of whether or not you're deciding to pursue different certifications. As those of you who have kits from us, you can see that our goal is to help you improve your palate. Our goal isn't to necessarily say, and this is going to appear on your test or certification exam. In fact, all our webinars, we have one coming up on Monday, all our webinars on Master the World are free. So if you're looking for free education with or without wine, there are ways for you to keep receiving these education things from us. We're also going to start an educator referral program. We know that during this pandemic, a lot of you who teach so well are unable to teach because you can't get wines to your clients. And so we're going to have a qualification process for educators who can earn referral dollars for every kit that you sell. So if you're a sommelier wanting to host virtual tastings with wines shipped to your clients, we may be able to help you keep teaching with wine. And third but not least, we are going to be hosting a regular, what I want to coin right now, the Full Circle Open Forum. This is going to be a safe and inspiring place for those of you who want to meet positive role models here in our industry. We will feature female leaders in our industry who can share their experiences, both from a professional development standpoint and a personal growth standpoint. And the first one will be in December. I know it's holiday month, so for those of you who can join us, great. We're going to make time for this very important event, and we will send out invitations as well. You should see them next week. And even though these will feature female leaders, I want to encourage everyone to attend. All genders, everyone. This is one way that we hope to support our colleagues here in the industry and to lead by example by providing an inclusive environment that embraces diversity and equality. I will give you my personal email if you have any suggestions. I will also encourage you guys to come to happy hour. And it's our last happy hour. If you want to chat more about the initiatives above, or even if you have any suggestions for some female leaders that you feel that we should invite, or topics that you feel are really pertaining to you, that you would like us to talk about in our sessions. And now it's time for some amazing Alentejano wines. This is by far, and I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but Alentejo is one of the first regions that Full Circle cut their teeth on. It is one of my favorite clients, and with pleasure, we are now ready to taste some amazing Alentejano wines with an awesome cast of speakers. Without further ado, Evan.
Thank you, Limang, and thank you for your powerful and important words shared with our greater community, both the full circle, inner circle, and concentric circles, and outer circles, and galaxies, and orbits, and all that stuff. And I hope everybody does continue to participate and work with us as we address these important challenges at hand, all under the auspices of education, which is what, in the end, we're all about. Today's session is appropriately titled A is for Alentejo, and that's not just the obvious A being the first word in Alentejo, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. I'm going to forego all of the housekeeping stuff because I know Andrea, also beginning with the letter A, I might add, is in there in the chat room and helping us out to gear you as far as where you ask questions and chat and participate there. And I'll make some closing remarks that are housekeeping related later. But I want to focus on the meat of what things are all about. While I would be happy and enthusiastically able to do this entire session myself, you don't need to hear from me as much as you really need to hear from our illustrious panel. I'm going to be joined momentarily by my co-presenter, cohort in crime, Laura Williamson, fellow Master Sommelier today. And we are joined by a host, a sextet of very talented vintners representing the 6 wines, the 3 Antão and the 3 Alicante Bouschet that we're going to be talking about today, and also joined by my good friend Tiago Caravana with the CVR. So let's go ahead and get started here. Just so you can recognize them when they pop up on screen. These are our friends who are joining us from Portugal. They're staying up late tonight. They're going to be the only people who are truly able to join happy hour at happy hour while all of us are doing it sometime between lunchtime and early afternoon. And you'll see Pedro and Nuno and Dora, Sandra and Tiago, who will join us when they're brought up on screen for their specific wines. It is my great pleasure now to ask Tiago Caravana to join us, to come back on screen and back on video, and just kick us off here. Tiago, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of chatting with him, meeting him at some point in time as we used to go on the road together. Tiago is the marketing director behind all aspects of things Alentejo, and has single-handedly done so much to promote this increasingly important appellation globally and certainly here in the United States. So please, a few opening words, Tiago.
Thank you, Evan. Welcome. Thank you all for attending this webinar. It's actually an honor for us in the Alentejo to have a dedicated webinar in this year's Full Circle BevCon. Not only because we are reaching such a prestigious audience, but we also, because we feel that in this particular year, we're helping our friends at Full Circle and providing that this splendid conference will keep on going for years to come. Evan, Laura, and 6 Alentejo winemakers are going to guide you through this wine region that starts with an A. I would like to thank them now and hope that you find this masterclass useful and that you enjoy the wines. Stay safe.
Thank you, Tiago. Thank you so much. And Tiago will be with us and join us again during the question and answer period, and also stick around for our happy half hour as well too. So thank you, Tiago. Let's kick off today by talking about A. And like I said before, it is indeed for Alentejo, but A means a lot more in this part of the world. A stands for, of course, autochthonous. I put the pronunciation out there because I think half of us look at that word, which is another word for indigenous or native, if you will, and trip all over it. But there are a number of autochthonous grapes that are not only unique specifically to Portugal, but to Alentejo as well. And whether it's Tinta Grossa or a grape like Antão or others, this is a place where if you're interested in the off the beaten track varieties, or as they call them locally, castas, this is your place to be, and we'll focus on two momentarily. Amphoras, or talias, as they're called in Portugal, are very much the rage these days. And for those of you who think that the amphoras were pulled out of a Cracker Jack box and made popular yesterday, a little bit of deep digging into the world of Alentejo will show you that contiguously and consecutively since the Roman times, they are amongst the leaders and one of the few that have been producing wines in this very important vessel all that time. A is also for agricultural diversity. And I think lest we put ourselves purely in the grape basket, it's important to understand that from an agricultural standpoint, Alentejo is so much more to this Iberian country. It's the source of cork, not only for Alentejo and Portugal, but for so much of the world. I'm sure many of you are aware of the sheer preeminence that they play there. For grain, all of the grains there, this is grain country and cattle country as well. So the agricultural diversity is a hallmark of this very important and amazing region of Portugal. And then of course there are the grapes. And then lastly, I think we would be remiss as to not mention the incredible food that comes from the Alentejo, the alimentaria alentejana. I always tell people when they go to Portugal and they're saying, where should I eat in Lisbon or where should I go to eat in Porto? I remind them that you can hop a quick little train from Lisbon and be in Évora in about 90 minutes and expose yourself to some of the best, most amazing comfort food, which we all need in times of pandemic and COVID. More there, and whether it's Açorda or sopa alentejana, which is a great broth-based soup with egg and garlic and bread, migas, which are a wonderful way of pulling bread and other ingredients together. Of course, the great black-hoofed pig, porco preto, which unbeknownst to all of us, actually comes from Alentejo. It's not Spanish in origin, and taking that same wonderful pork and cooking it with clams, as the picture on the far right shows you, gives you porco alentejana, etc. So I'm going to ask Laura to join me on screen right now. And before I jump into a couple of quick slides here, what does Alentejo mean to you, Laura? What does it conjure up for you when I ask you about it?
Thank you, Evan. What it really conjures to me is this connection with food-friendly wines. That's kind of how I discovered it when I was working the floors and incorporating a lot of these extraordinary wines, wowing guests with them, is that they just acquiesce to cuisine so easily. Then, of course, you have the value associated with it. Most of the wines over-deliver for the price to quality ratio. And then you just have, I like to term it as ease. This is a warm area. On the reds, you feel a lot of that warmth and the sun and the power. But the irony is you do have different styles. The whites really don't show that to a certain extent. There are richer styles, but what we have today, what we're going to see here soon, is that these are very different than what we expect from this warm kind of zone that combats the heat and the drought. So that was it in a nutshell.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Laura. And to that point, you've got 6 glasses. For those of you who do have wines in front of you, you shouldn't wait for cues from me to start enjoying your wines. Each wine will be spoken to and addressed individually by a winemaker. But again, enjoy the wines, and hopefully you're not going to be just pouring them right now. Hopefully you pour them a little bit earlier. So let's talk a little bit about the Alentejo going into 2020 and what it represents and where it stands. Alentejo covers approximately 1/3 of the land mass of this country, but is home to only 10% of the population, which means you don't hit like rush hour traffic and things like that. And you have vast open spaces and you don't feel sort of claustrophobic there. Represents a little less than 15% of the total area under vine in this country, and also about 15%, similar amount of its total production. Now, as we know, in the last couple of years, there's been ups and downs with Mother Nature and all that, and them being down in production has more to do with Mother Nature than it certainly does in demand. And any demand that we've seen being lessened in this part of the world is simply because it's important on that side of the world, and I'll explain that in a minute. They represent a good percent of the volume and a lot of the value of the exports too. So think about this, just short of 1 out of 5 bottles and almost 50% of the value of all Portuguese wine exported, and that is to say DOP and PGI wines, not in, you know, Tetra Paks and stuff like that, but excluding obviously fortified wines such as port and sparkling wines, comes from this particular region of Alentejo today. So it really is a motor of the Portuguese engine that makes the whole country go. What's been clear is that message is resonating. It's certainly resonating here. It's resonating all over the world. And as you can see from our good friends over at Vivino, they've been tracking, they have more data access than yours truly does for sure. And they've seen that the consumption of Portuguese wines has been leading the charge in terms of growth. And they've seen increased reviews, they've seen increased consumption, they've seen increased scans on both red wines and white wines over the year. And as the internet these days becomes a leading edge of understanding people's preferences and palates, seeing those sorts of figures coming out of the world of cyberspace makes everybody shine, smile, and certainly my friends in Iberia do that as well. Within Portugal, I always like to tell people that if you spend any time there, and when we all can travel again, gosh, I really do suggest that you spend some time over in this magnificent and magic part of the world. I always say it's kind of like the People's Choice Awards. You know, if you ask the Portuguese people what they consume, regardless of what region they're in, there is this sort of lean towards or lean into Portuguese wine, specifically from Alentejo. In year 2018, which is the most recent statistics that I have, they equaled 14% of all of the quality wines produced in the country, as I said before. So this would be the DO wines and the IGVR wines. And they produced the largest percentage of all of the regions of what we would call these quality wines. So not only is their production fairly ample, it's all of very high quality. And then most important, because people generally vote with their pocketbook and vote with their palate and vote with their wine glass, look at those numbers at the bottom. The Portuguese people themselves drink 37% of the aggregate consumption of Portuguese table wines is in Alentejano wines, representing again almost half of the value. And like I said before, telling all of their friends to buy the wines in export. So please don't underestimate the ongoing and emerging importance of this very critical region to that part of the world. Just to give you a flavor there, you can see our map of Portugal, sort of in the larger thing. We're at about, I don't know, not to say 30,000 feet, but maybe 18,000 feet. And you can see the sheer size of, in purple there, of what Alentejo covers there. You see the Rio Tejo up towards the middle top there, and Alentejo, Alem means behind, Tejo, the river. So all this area is behind and moving south towards the Spanish border and covering, as I said before, a fairly significant landmass. The two areas that are pointed out there, Évora sort of being the unofficial capital of the region, sits in that middle belt. I want you to denote and look at those darker purple areas because those are the wine regions that we see before. I bring that out only to remind you that one, most of our production is pretty far in the northern half there, and there is this vast region which actually touches the coast. You can see that in the lower left there is in part of the Alentejo VR, Vinos Regionais, there is an Alentejo Costa, if you will, that I believe over time with climate change and things like that, you need the maritime influence, you'll be hearing even more about it. But our areas are those dark purple areas in slight setback there, which you can see now in greater picture here on the map. So I like to tell people that you sort of divide the Alentejo into 3 bands, if you will. The northern band there sort of goes across the area around Porto Alegre, and that's sort of the highest altitude and further north area there, and makes a very distinctive style of wines, both using the varieties we'll be talking about, but others. In fact, some of the highest peaks in the entire country sort of counterintuitively lie in the mountain ranges of this area. Then you have that central band moving due east from Lisbon across there, which covers Estremoz, it covers Borba, Évora would be sort of the southern part of that band moving in there. And that's what we can sort of refer to as the Alentejano sweet spot. That's where, you know, wines are emblematic. A lot of the classic styles of wines using a vast array of grapes are there. And for those of you that follow baseball, the sweet spot of the bat would definitely be that band. And then the southern part of the band there, which goes around the areas of Beja and the further south area, that's the southern band there. And this is where it starts to get warmer, although you do have some influence coming in eastward from the sea, keep some of those areas in the diurnal exchanges down at night, but make a different style there. Temperatures obviously get a little bit warmer. Wine styles here could be more robust. So think about the Alentejo geographically as we move through these wines today in the greater bands. So lastly, I just want to bring us back to that indigenousness that we talked about before. And I know a lot of people sort of say, well, they got more indigenous grapes, don't they, like in Italy or maybe in like France or places like that. If you look at the actual density of indigenous grape varieties per square kilometer, Portugal actually beats everybody and beats everybody by almost a metric of threefold if you look at Italy, which is the second one. So when you go down that list that Portugal proudly puts out every year of, you know, we have over 250 indigenous grape varieties, well, duh, the answer is yes, is validated on that map here today. So we're going to be focusing our attention on two grape varieties here that you can see there, and they both follow the arrows. These are important not only because they are the leading in the top part there of reds, Alicante Bouschet in front of Syrah and in front of Aragonés, and in the bottom, Antão in front of Arinto, as being not only the most signature grapes of these areas these days, but also the grapes that are performing above the belt and making really amazing wines. So therefore, they are being planted more than the other grapes that you see these days too. So you can see that they've literally climbed to the top there over a 10-year span in being as grapes are either replanted or newly planted with the grapes that are driving the identity of this very important region today. Alicante Bouschet for red, followed by Syrah, and then obviously Aragonés is the big dog in this part of the world, and then Antão followed by Arinto, which we're seeing more and more of these days too. We're going to start by talking about our Antão. So if you haven't jumped into your white glasses, you should be doing so at this point in time. And just to give you a little bit of background on this grape variety before we start tasting, if you look at Portugal overall, it's the 28th most planted grape variety. Now, given the fact that you're starting with 250, that puts you about in the upper 10%. And it is important and it is gaining, as we talked about before. It's the number 10 most white planted grape variety, which again, given the fact that you really only find it in this part of the world in Alentejo, means that it obviously is disproportionately important in the region itself. Represents about 1% of all plantings at a little over 3,000 acres, but it represents 37% of the total white plantings in Alentejo proper. It is the #1 white grape there. Why is that? You'll hear more about from our vintners in a minute, but there are very few grapes that can perform well in warm weather. And if you've ever been to the Alentejo in the summer or even in the fall, you know what I'm talking about here, and manage to maintain interesting flavors, distinctive characteristics, still hold acidity and perform extremely well. The grape is pronounced Antão or Weiss, depending on if your accent is Portuguese versus Brazilian, but that's definitely there. And with these Portuguese things, I think we all need help on pronunciation. As far as key flavors go, these I just listed. Obviously, flavors are in the eyes of the beholder and how you determine that, but some of the most frequently associated grape or should say wine flavors that come with this grape would be various stone fruits, from things like plums to apricots and nectarines, etc. It has a very strong tropical background as well, melons and guavas and things like that. And then very soft nuts, not so much the harder, more bitter nuts like say walnuts, but more things that are soft like cashews and macadamias. And even pine nuts and things like that. Some very ripe, more in the orange line of citrus and underlying minerality, all framed with texture, generosity, smoothness, and creaminess. Anything to add, Laura, before I turn the first wine over to you and our first speaker?
Not really, except that, you know, my first introduction to this grape was mostly with blends. And I think it's fantastic to see this shift now in terms of single variety, a push to kind of manage that. And, you know, adjust harvest times, picking, just to ensure that the acidity and the balance remains to allow this to have its own place as a single varietal.
Mm-hmm. Me with my mouth full of wine. As you're tasting across these wines, and let's go ahead and bring up the slide for the first wine here. I do want to let you know that both for the whites and for the reds, the goal here is to select 3 wines, of which the first 2 are pure plays, 100% variety. The third wines in both the white and red case are using the grape as part of a blend, the single most important component of that blend, but also showing you different interpretive styles. So they're not all going to be very monolithic. They're going to show you different nuances. So just a couple of things to look for here. Grapes don't come out of Cracker Jack boxes. You get sort of a sense of the styles. Antão Weiss is called Antonio Weiss. I've never even heard that, but supposedly it is. And it does blend a lot, as Laura said a moment ago. And those would be some of the primary grapes that you would see it hanging out with when it's not in a pure form. And just for those of you who tend to be a bit of genetic geeks and hanging out with all those folks like Jose Villamos who want to put that all together, there's your lineage. I'll talk about that more with Alicante later. So Laura, why don't you kick us off with the first one and then share the vintner and join us?
Sure, absolutely. I think that it's really fascinating because it has this purity, this crystalline nature and mineral drive that you may not expect from such a warm area. And I think that's what's so special is the capacity for this to be drought resistant. What it really kind of reminds me of is Simeon in the Hunter Valley and some of the challenges they have to deal with there too, with not necessarily, the moisture that they have in Hunter Valley, but the warmth and picking early, making sure that the balance exists. And I think that if you're not ready or expecting this style, you're going to be completely shocked as a consumer, a guest, a client, wherever that may be, and on trade or off. But this very lime-driven, citrus-oriented purity, I do get a little bit of pine nut. You mentioned the cashew macadamia, but for me, this is more pine nut, but there's also this kind of flint or talc component. So I could even go Simeon Puy Fumé in a way that really just shows, I think, the pedigree. And if you look and contemplate the vintage, 17, this really shows no signs of getting tired or starting to take a downward trend. I just think it's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a style that I love. And it's one I believe that really can shock consumers with expectations of Portugal in a positive way.
I agree.
So, yeah, I would bring Pedro in now and tell us about this wine.
Great. Pedro, please join us and give us a few minutes about this delicious bottling.
Hi, Ivan.
Yep. Hey, Pedro, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Limang. And yes, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I believe this is my first webinar. I'm not talking about amphora wine. In Rocim, we are in Rocim estate, and we are known by the amphora wines. But today we are probably talking about one of my favorite wine from most of Rocim wines. We make a lot of wines. The winemaker is very creative, too much creative. But this Olho do Mocho, it's one of my favorite because of the aging ability. So most of Alentejo wine producers and most Portuguese wine producers, when they have important people like even Goldstein or other people in the winery, they usually do a vertical tasting of the best reds they have. When I do that in Rocim estate, I usually do vertical tasting of this Olho do Mocho wine. This white can age really, really good. So we are in Vidigueira. Vidigueira is a region, a sub-region of the Alentejo, deep in the south of the Alentejo. Of course, it's warm. It's a very hot region, but we can have a freshness and minerality, especially in the whites, but also in the reds, that we cannot find in other regions. If you ask the old people from the Alentejo, everybody's going to say, oh, white wines, it's from Vidigara. Exactly because of this freshness, this minerality that you can feel in the wines. So Rocim is an organic estate. It's me and my wife, Catarina. She produces the grapes. I make the wine, which is not so easy sometimes. But our main philosophy is to respect our terroir as much as we can. I'm not from the Alentejo. I'm from the north. I'm from Porto. But every year I'm getting more interested and more excited about this terroir. Of course, we are all concerned about the global warming, and we are in the eye of the hurricane for global warming. But so far, we have been able to manage all these changes. So going directly to this Olho do Mocho, it's very fresh, very vibrant. In the pack sheets, we say new barrel, but actually it's not true. We have around 20% new barrels. The rest is second use barrels. The idea is, again, respecting the terroir as much as we can. And we use big barrels of 500 liters exactly for the same reason. And it's about that.
Thank you so much, Pedro. What I think is stunning about this wine, and a very good difference between the second wine that we're going to be having, is the freshness, the brightness of it. And I look forward to coming over and doing that vertical with you, because I do believe, and very much along the lines of what Laura was saying, that sort of in the analogous way to Hunter Valley Semillon, this is a wine that is structured for the long haul, for a grape variety that a lot of people just don't. They think of, oh, you should drink Canton Vache fresh and bright and all that, and that, you know, it's going to be good for 3 to 5 years, and then this is a wine that I think demonstrates how wrong an opinion that can be. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, all the vintners will be with us during the question and answer period there. So if you have specific questions about the wine, hold it for Pedro afterwards and he will do it. Thank you so much, Pedro. Our next wine that we have also is from the southern area. It's near Vidigueira. It's specifically from Beja, the area around Albanoa. And this is a wine called Malhadinha Nova. A lot of you are hopefully familiar with this wine, with its always gorgeous labels, which are designed by the children of the winemaking family there. Again, a really nice effort. I think for a lot of people, as you're tasting this wine, it's going to show more typically what you are expecting in terms of more of the voluptuous texture, the generosity of the flavors and all that. It's an extraordinary estate. And the thing that people forget about the southern part of Alentejo is that it's literally equidistant to Lisbon as it is to the northern part of the Algarve. So it's a very good place to be. You can go do a lot of trips there. And if you have an opportunity to visit this estate, I would highly recommend doing it. I'm not going to talk much more about the wine, except to say it's one of my favorites, and a wine that I think is fairly symbolic of what the variety is capable of doing in a more traditional classic form. We're blessed to have Nuno Gonzalez here with us today. And Nuno, if you want to talk to us a little bit about your wine.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Evan, Laura, and Limeng. Well, I'm as Pedro. I'm not from Alentejo. Also, I'm from a city which is in between Porto and Lisbon on the seaside. But I've been working here in Malhadinha for almost 9 years now. So I'm almost someone from the Alentejo also. And Alentejo was a big discovery for me. I was a huge fan, well, still am, a huge fan for the wines from Antão and Bairrada. And normally the wines I would have from Alentejo would be the big names like Esporão and Mochão, all those big names. So when I started here working with the Soares family, and especially Luis Duarte, I was introduced to Antão Vache. So it's a grape that it's quite difficult to work in the winery. The pulp is very hard. It's difficult to press. Can be sometimes a little bit phenolic. If you harvest a little bit too late, it's gonna lack all the acidity. So it's a grape that you need to be very careful. So what we've been doing in the last years is trying to pick it up a little bit early. Okay, the 2019 Antão was picked on the first days of September, and it comes at 12.5 alcohol. So I think it's a really nice wine. It has luscious fruit on the nose. Like Pedro said, our soils here are mainly schist, so there's a lot of freshness and a little bit of minerality on the nose, the creaminess on the palate, which I think that makes this a textbook Antão, especially on the southern part of Alentejo, because that's where we are located. And although we are a very young producer, because we only started in 2003, I think that our philosophy is trying to make the best wines possible. And the Antão, which is one of the whites that we make almost every year, it comes at quite a small production because it's only 7,000 bottles, okay? And it's one of the most favorite vintages for me, this Antão. Just to finish, I think that Pedro also focused that, is that normally the wines from Alentejo, they're not seen or regarded as wines that can age that well. And normally when you do the verticals on Antão, even the first ones like 06, 07 that were barrel fermented and barrel aged and a whole new French oak barrels, they are doing really well. Okay, they are doing really well, and I think that Alentejo is definitely one of the most exciting regions from Portugal, definitely.
Great, Nuno. Thank you so much. I think it's going to be very interesting. Is we're all addressing the issues of climate change earlier, and we'll come up later. I think there's going to be a number of grape varieties specific to warm areas like Alentejo that are going to be found in other parts of the world. I've been actually chatting with some of my vintner friends here in California and asking them, anybody planting Antão? Is anybody planting some of these other warmer grapes that have the ability to maintain their varietal integrity, cold and warm weather? And you're not here. If they are, they're not saying so yet. But I do think that a lot of the efforts that you guys have been demonstrating over time are good models for places that are warming up around the world moving forward. I also think it's been an interesting juxtaposition to show something that is fresh and bright and classic and quintessential, if you will, as this 2019 Malhadinha Nova, against showing something with a couple of years of age on it, yet still fresh, as we just did with Pedro. So a lovely juxtaposition. Laura, any thoughts from you before we move to our third wine?
Yes, I would just like to give a shout out to this property because it's one of the most exquisite I've seen, not just in Portugal, but anywhere. And the fond memories I have of visiting the property, I thought that when I was driving there, I was going into the middle of nowhere. I really thought I was going to go to the coast and Algarve. But one of those crazy moments was seeing all the aspects that went into this property, not only the guest house, but the farming, the vegetables that are in the garden, the porco preto. It was the best I'd ever had in my entire life. Those memories I will never forget. And I remember enjoying this wine with the porco preto and indulging a little too much and thinking, this is really the true hospitality of Portugal. So it just holds a special place, and I didn't expect it because of the area being so warm and so dry, but the wines were so expertly crafted. It was a wow moment for me.
Excellent, thanks. And thank you again, Nuno, for joining us. So as I alluded to earlier, one of the whole concepts of what I wanted to show you today was different interpretations of the grape, making a monovarietal wine, but then also showing you, because we would be remiss in not reminding everybody that most of the wines that are made in Portugal are in fact blends and assemblages of wine. So the third wine we're going to show in each case shows you that to the T, and that wine is Rubrica Branco from Duarte. Laura, why don't you take the lead here?
Fantastic. I am a huge fan of Luis and all the projects they have, which stretch across the majority of Portugal, not just here. But what I think is, with this example of this blend, what surprises me is the freshness that remains. I think that Luis has an expert hand at this, at trying to bring in texture and richness with the Verdelho and a little bit of aromatic lift with Viognier, but you know, the precision that the Antão holds on to this, I really wasn't expecting it to be so pieced together in an, you know, fashion that made me ponder. I think that's what's amazing about this. And, you know, just looking at your tech sheet here with David Babenstock at Esporão and all the incredible work they do with blends, I know we're going to get there soon. But I think this also shows that even as a single varietal or in a blend, it has its purpose, it has its reason, depending on what you're looking for, what kind of body, weight, density. You don't feel this heavier weight of it, the 13.5 alcohol. I don't notice it on the palate personally. I just think it's well crafted, still precise, clean, easy to drink. It is a wine lover's style of white.
Excellent. And we're lucky to have Dora Simon, probably the person who actually runs the winery, here with us today. Dora, if you could join us. Dora and I have the pleasure of knowing each other for some time. Dora was actually the former head of the Alentejo CVR when I started, when we started Full Circle over a decade ago, and is an amazing protagonist for the appellation. And a great proponent of all things Portugal too. And it's wonderful to see things come, no pun intended, full circle, and have her here speaking to the wines today. So Dora, if you could join us and talk to us a little bit about Rubrica, yourself, Luis, everything.
Thank you very much, Evan. Thank you, Laura, for the nice words about the wine, and to Limeng as well. It's good for me to be now on the producer side. You know, running the commission, the wine commission, was a good job, like for 7 years, and it was fantastic. But I think it's very important also to have the perspective and to work on the producer side, because it helps us also to understand what's really important, and also to give feedback now to who's running the commission as well. I found it funny because the last two wines were made by winemakers that were not from Alentejo, and we'll find out that Alentejo actually is a melting pot of immigrants from Portugal. In our own country, we're all going to Alentejo. It's just 500,000 people living there from 10 million. But actually everyone wants to live in Alentejo. It's a wonderful piece of land, like the third of Portugal, as you said before. It's a third of Portugal, and it's a beautiful landscape with rolling hills, olive groves, cork trees, and all that, and some of the most fantastic wines in Portugal. Not the best, there's no such thing in wine, but it's actually a wonderful place to live and to produce wine. And I was glad that I met Luis, and we got married. We have 3 children, 3 kids, but it was after he started actually the project, before I joined him. So in the early 2000s, he was planting the vineyards. It was something he was starting while doing other consultancies and other jobs. And actually he decided to plant 10 grape varieties in 10 hectares. So he thought that the blend was probably one of the very important things to do in his wines, the style of wines he wanted to do. Now, what we do with the Rubrica, this wine is also a blend of 3 different grape varieties. Half of it is Antão, which is it gives a lot of structure to the wine. It's a sort of has the aging potential of a Chardonnay, and the structure of probably like a Chardonnay would give. And then we also added to the blend Verdelho and Viognier. Also, one of the things we want to have in this wine is not to have too much oak influence. So 30% of this wine went to new oak barrels, fermented and aged in new oak barrels, large 500-liter oak barrels, French oak barrels. We only use French oak because we think, not because we don't like the other, but because for our style of wine, it's more appropriate to use the French oak. And the rest was actually was made in stainless steel. So what we have now in this wine is actually what you mentioned before in Antão, which is like those some tropical, very decent but very tropical aromas, not too much, and some apricots, and that's what you feel on that. And also the oak influence is very light. It makes it very delicious and really like smooth on the palate. I think this, I love to drink this wine. It's like, this is 2019. It's a very early, I mean, we had to launch it, but to launch this wine. But we have tasted also, we keep magnums of previous years, and we see the incredible aging potential of the wines. And I think it's also due to the Antão influence on the wine, because it's 50% is a large quantity, and thus, as it was said before, Antão really helps the aging potential of the wines. There's something that I think it's also the how you can combine this wine with food. I think it's important because Alentejo is a gastronomic region. It's probably, I'm from the north, but I really love the gastronomy of Alentejo, and I find it one of the best in Portugal. And I think that's why people make really good wines, because the gastronomy there is really wonderful. And I think this wine goes very well with white meat. If you have some dishes with garlic and a little bit spices, not too strong, you know, light spices and garlicky dishes, and poultry. And I'm thinking probably now that you're having Thanksgiving like in a week, this is wine that goes wonderfully with turkey. That's something that I would probably not use a red, but probably use this white with a little bit oak influence. It goes very well. I don't want to go too much on the time. Thank you very much, and then we can talk about the wine later. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dora. Thank you so much, and always appreciate the food pairings. That's good. It sings to me specifically, and I think people are also oftentimes not aware of the importance of spice. You know, people forget that during the times of exploration, a lot of the spice route that we know of came through at least one point through Portugal. So there are these undercurrents of interesting spicing and herbs and ingredients that are thanks to the Portugal that, frankly, the rest of Europe and many parts of the world have been exposed to them, and a delicious wine too. And I think hopefully everyone's getting some enthusiasm here. If you haven't been super exposed to Antão, spend more time on it. If you're a winemaker in a warmer climate and you're looking at doing something different, think about Antão as well too. It's a great variety that's unique to this part of the world, but nevertheless growing its importance on the world stage. So, and now for something completely different, literally completely different, is we're going to be switching grapes here. We're still in the Alentejo region with the grape Alicante Bouschet. Now, the first thing that's very important, and I'm going to save you the bullet that I was taking for years and years and years until I was corrected. I think there's this proclivity, maybe it's an American proclivity, that everyone calls the grape Alicante Bouschet, but the grape is Alicante. The E is silent. So rather than making the fool out of yourself that I did when chatting with a lot of my winemaker friends, please don't do that. Alicante comes from the term Alicante that we talk about in southern France, specifically speaking to Grenache, one of its pseudonyms there, and not the town in Spain. It's the 12th most planted grape variety in all of Portugal. Again, that's over reds or whites, and number 8 for reds today. That represents 2% of the total planting, so about 10,000 plus acres there, and 13% of all red plantings in Alentejo, and number 3 grape after Aragonês, which we also know as Tinta Roriz, and Fincadeira, which we also know as Tinta Amarela. And by the way, that list of 250 grape varieties that I talk about today does not include the synonyms. So if you add all the synonyms for all these wines, you're probably closer to 3/4 of 1,000, 750 more than that. What's extraordinary about this grape variety, and I want to take a step back as you'll see in the visual in a minute, is number one, is it truly native to Portugal? No. Would it be arguable to say that the grapes are making the most interesting wines from this grape today in Portugal? I would say yes. As you're going to see in a minute, the flavors are definitely dense. They're big wines. They're compact with voluminous black fruits. There's sort of a meaty savoriness to it. Oftentimes people will find sort of sweet as well as smokier characters to it. Peppers of all kinds, from actual vegetable peppers to peppercorns to cracked blacks. Olives of both the black and green variety, fennel, the list goes on and on and on. And I didn't want to make your slide too busy, but I'm sure you'll find a lot more elements there as you taste through the wines, which I hope you're doing as I present here. Texturally, though, you're going to go in a very different direction. One of the hallmarks of this grape is, in fact, its structure. The wines tend to be, particularly when they're young, they tend to be big. The tannins tend to be hard, bordering on the fairly gritty. Tannin management is a huge deal with this particular grape variety. They can be astringent, especially if they're not handled correctly. I'm speaking to the tannins here. And the wines have brilliant acidity and have to play that wonderful feel of being lean and tart with that acidity, but also obviously being ripe enough so that they show themselves well. Unripe Alicante Bouschet is not a happy grape or a happy place to be. So just to give people a little bit of familiarity, this grape is French. So I know that we almost associate it, and probably a lot of you are scratching your head saying, did I ever have this in France? If I did, was it good? And I think it's safe to say that even most of the French would tell you that while the grape was planted in direct response to, as so many grapes were, post-phylloxera, to pick up on volume and get some character and quality in there in a short period of time and ramped up, it hasn't been as successful a grape there locally as they would have thought. And there's other grapes too, like Marcelon and Arinoroa and other grapes that were developed during this particular period of time. Petit Bouschet too being another grape that you can see on that came in this period, that frankly did not necessarily achieve everything they thought. Somebody, most notably Monsieur Louis Bouchet's son, thought of the idea of taking that Petit Bouschet, crossing it with Grenache, bringing in softness, bringing in pedigree, etc., and ended up creating this Alicante Bouschet, which did very well. But when it was discovered by other people, most namely the people, the Reynolds family, amongst others in Portugal, who said, this grape looks pretty good, why don't we practice it here? It found some touchstone spots in Portugal, most notably in the Alentejo, and has thrived ever since. This slide's a little busier than the Antão Weiss version I shared with you before. It has a number of synonyms. This is a grape that has been much more of a global expat as opposed to a purely regional expat, such as Antão Weiss might have been. It carries different names, different synonyms. It's actually planted in a lot of places around the world. You still find it in France. You see it planted in, obviously, Spain as well too. But the styles are pretty straightforward. It's hard to produce rosés. There are a few people that try, but this is a Teinturier grape. So once you squish it, the pulp itself is red. Hard to make rosés out of that when it just wants to keep getting redder and redder. But I would point out that third bullet. And if you've ever had the pleasure of having Mouchau's fortified Alicante, it's a delightful wine and makes absolutely fabulous dessert style fortified wines as well too. It, like its Antão Weiss friend, sister, relative, it can make really good blended wines too. And you see the list of varieties there that is most frequently blended with, obviously Aragonés and Trincadeira being the two most planted within the region. Makes sense. But Syrah, as I pointed out before, if you remember grapes that are growing in importance there, Syrah and Alicante Bouschet together are proving to be really a dynamic duo, truly the Batman and Robin, or Batman and Batman of that part of the world. Alfrocheiro, a grape again native to Portugal, does well, and other grapes too. We have 3 different versions of it here. I want you to taste the first wine if you haven't done so already. And I specifically wanted to start out with this first wine for 2 reasons. Number one, obviously, it's pure. It's a 100% monocasta, single varietal wine. But 2 other things. One, it's a single vineyard, which I know Sandra will talk to us about the importance of Palmeiras in a little bit, or Palmeiras as they would say there. I apologize for my Carioca accent, but also because it's got some age on it. You'll notice it's 2012. So you do have the luxury of several years of age on it to see how the bouquet has developed over time, to see how the tannic structure has evolved over time. And it's going to be a very different wine than the 2 more current vintages that you see a little bit down the line. If you haven't had the opportunity to try aged Alicante Bouschet before. This is, I think, a very exemplary style of it, where you are starting to pick up nuances of bottle development, bouquet and maturation, but still maintaining this core of just this dense, voluminous fruit and all the other interesting flavors there. It gives me absolute pleasure to ask Sandra Alves, who is the lead winemaker at Esporão these days, to talk to us a little bit about this wine. She's been the heart and soul behind the wines. David, I know, gets appropriately just due praise at the winery, but Sandra is important on the day-to-day, and anyone who spends time at Esporão has visited before knows that she is rocking it. So Sandra, if you could please join us and talk to us a little bit about this lovely aged Alicante Bouschet.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you so much for all of you for this great moment. It's really amazing being here and just have this opportunity to talk about our wines and our region, and just talk about what we love to do. There is wine and tasting. Herdade Esporão is about 1,800 hectares just in the heart of Alentejo. And just to give an idea, we have about 700 hectares of vineyards, olive groves, other crops, everything growing in an organic way. And to talk about Alicante Bouschet and about this specific wine, I should talk about the very special vineyard where this Alicante Bouschet is growing, because we have different plots in our quite big territory. And I should say that for this specific Alicante Bouschet, it is very special vineyard because is located in an half slope facing northeast. This is very important because for one side we have a very long time with long hours of heat that Alicante Bouschet love it. But for the other hand, at the same time, this facing northeast slope provides some protection to the fruit that just protect the burning from sun that sometimes can be a problem in Alentejo. This is very important to grow nicely and to have a really homogeneous maturation. For the other hand, we have quite poor soil, so Alentejo and our territory where we have different kind of soils, but this specific vineyard have some spice, having some clay. Well, are mostly poor and lacks some water. That is important to also to naturally make some conditions for a quite low production. So this Alicante Bouschet usually goes to 5 to 6 tons per hectare. That is important just to maintain the quality of these grapes. And of course, we have to be very attentive to the right time to have this harvest, because we have identified phenolic ripening. The berry is very complete. To be able to avoid these vegetable notes and bitter tannins that sometimes, if you don't have the right attention, you can't have in your wine. So Alicante Bouschet from Vinha das Palmeiras, as Heaven was saying. So we have all these 3 special moments that, of course, it's more than this, but in these 5 minutes, these 3 special moments, they are very important to have a proper Alicante Bouschet that grows in the center of Alentejo. Just a note, I think Alicante Bouschet just goes very, very nicely in the bottle. If you have the opportunity to taste it now, you will see that have all this complexity, maintains all this intensity of the color, but at the same time you can have these notes of black fruit, some jams, some liquor, some wild berries at the same time. But also you can find some leather aromas, some balsamic notes, and it's amazing with food, with some, some barbecue, with some smoked meats, with some hard cheese. Anyway, I think that's it.
You could go on
Evan?
and on and on, and I agree with you. We could go on and on. I think this is another great variety that again, on the billboard charts, should have a bullet next to it, because I think it's also going to be another great variety in the world of changing climates and such that we'll be seeing more of. Unlike Antão, where you don't find any here in this country right now, there are people playing with Alicante Bouschet in notable appellations around California and in other parts of the world that are warmer. So I think we will see a lot. And what a great introduction, and to have an older vintage to start with, Sandra, is just delightful. Laura, anything that you want to share before we move into our second wine?
I think one fact that gets overlooked so quickly is Esporão's extreme focus on sustainability. When I was there for my first visit in 2008, there was a little bit of talk about that, and they didn't really highlight all this focus. And then they won a huge award in 2012, and I was back 2 different times after that. And I just could not believe that extreme focus. And, you know, I preface it here because we are in an area that is so dry, hot, and I was just blown away by what Esporão was doing with conservation of water and all the other processes put into motion to make sure that this was a model also for not only just Portugal, but everywhere else in the world. So hats off to Esporão for that, because you're a huge operation and you don't really see that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. And Laura, why don't you lead us now into our next one? What's going to be interesting here is I'm particularly, I really like this wine, but I think what's great is to demonstrate to people how being a cooperative is not a bad word. I think so many of us are conditioned to believe that big is bad and co-ops are incapable of producing wines of quality and gravitas. And I think this wine in specific, and obviously CARMIM in general, do a great job. So please lead us through this wine.
Yes, and I just think that, again, in an area where we expect warmth, there is great balance to this. It is not only, you know, black and going into blue, it's got a lot of red fruit still here. Mm-hmm. And that tells me that there's a lift on it. I don't feel the weight of that alcohol. I see that it's 15.5 in the slide and the tech sheet, but I think that this is a great style that is one that many Americans, and you know, we are talking about our US consumers, look for in terms of juicy, plush, friendly, honest, sun beckoning styles. And then I think about the ability to pair it with food. And there's so many different things that you can pair this with, from anything on the grill to roasts, etc. So I think that it's just a fun contrast to what we saw with Esporão and the age, and how juicy and open this is in youth without tannins that want to, you know, rock your world and set you back 100 to 200 feet.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have Tiago Garcia with us from Portugal today. Tiago, a few words about this this wine and the challenges of making wines like this when you obviously have so many other wines and children to look after at the co-op.
Hello, thank you, Laura. Thank you, William. So it's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about CARMIM. Like you said, it's one of the biggest wineries in Portugal, maybe the biggest in Alentejo. We have around 3,000 acres, and from that acres, we have around 15% of Alicante Bouschet. Alicante Bouschet is one of the most important varieties for us. We made many blends of our brands with Alicante Bouschet, and in the years we think that the Alicante has so many good potential. Like this 17, we made the single variety, and Alicante Bouschet, like you said, is a very powerful variety, very good tannins, very good natural acidity, and it's good versatility that we can make in the blends and with variety. And so the wines can be very good aging potential. So, like you said, in CARMIM we are big, but we have the wine growers. They treat the vineyards with so much love. So we have very good grapes to make these good wines, and this Alicante Bouschet is an example. and you can see like he has a very good structure, very good tannins, very good ripe fruit, and we give him 9 months in use the 2 to 3 years barrels just to give some complexity to the wine, and it's a very gastronomic wine to take with Alentejo great dishes, and I hope you can enjoy it, and I hope you can came to Portugal to came so to CARMIM and visit Monsaraz. It's a historical village and one of the most beautiful village in Portugal, and I hope you can come soon.
Thank you, Tiago. Thank you so much. What's great here, and I think, you know, if wines can be sort of emblematic of style here, you know, this is sort of very classic. You know, you taste a wine, list this. Number one, it could only be made in Portugal. Two, it tastes, I mean, if Alentejo had a taste, this tastes like Alentejo to me, and the food pairings that one finds amongst Alentejano grapes and Alicante, specifically for reds, Antão Weiss for whites, is so perfectly paired, perfectly matched to the cuisines of the region. You know, I think Dora pointed out earlier that it is so easy to overlook areas there, you know, and especially it's interesting. I'm based on what everyone was saying, I'm surprised there's anybody left in the north of Portugal, because it sounds to me like they're all moving to Alentejo, but that was just my own quick observation. But, you know, for me, when I go to Portugal, I've had the pleasure of traveling through the various regions around the country. To me, Portuguese food in Alentejo is what I call the comfort food of the country. And especially right now, in the times we're living in, when things get a little stressful, a little bit crazy, we all gravitate towards the comfort foods that we grew up with, that we love, etc. And you need warming foods, you need warming wines that bring pleasure to the soul and all that. And these two wines, this wine with that would be true. The one thing I would make an observation about Alicante Bouschet though, and again, the tannins are what they are. It's probably not my number one choice to just have a glass and watch the clouds go by without some food in front of me. It definitely is a grape and a wine style that craves food, but it's just delicious. Thank you so much, Tiago, for your time. And we're going to move on to our last wine here. Last but certainly not least, and again, keeping in the tradition we established with our trio of whites, we have a red wine here, of which Alicante is the lion's share proportion of it, but it's a classic blend, and it's a classic blend with other grapes that one finds locally and will be brought to life by my dear friend Paulo Laureano. For those of you who don't know Paulo, you should. And one of the other great treats we've had across the 6 wines that we've had so far is meeting and speaking with, whether it's Luis or Paulo, some of, you know, truly the rock star winemakers of this country today. Paulo's got international experience, international consultancy. He's a teacher. He's a gifted winemaker who shares his knowledge there, and is also a bit of an archivist too. I believe he has the stranglehold on all of the Tinta Grossa, another native grape to the Alentejo and to Portugal, that we can find there, and is really known, as he'll speak to you about finding grapes, but finding the grapes through the personalities of finding the vineyards and the fruit, and then bringing it to life through the wine. So it gives me great pleasure. I'm going to be quiet here because he has so much to say, to ask Paulo to join us to talk to us a little bit about this Vinhas Velhas private selection wine.
Hi, Evan. Thank you very much for your words. But really, what is important, it's the wine, and the wine it's made to give pleasure to the people. That's the most important. Well, just let me tell you what our philosophy around the wines. We really believe that wine is the most simple thing in the world. We just need to have the right place and the right grapes to get a good wine. We are in Vidigueira. We are returning to Vidigueira again. And Vidigueira, it's really in Alentejo, quite different region. And even Vidigueira itself, it's completely different from one place to another. We are near the village of Vidigueira, where the soils are quite different. We have a soil of schist, black schist, quite hard, different from the rest of the schist that you can find around. But it's quite important. It gives a lot of minerality and freshness to the wines. And Vidigueira, it's also different because it's not a flat area. It's an area with some slopes. The climate, it's quite hot, but we have a big difference between the daily and the night temperatures. And all this makes the terroir of Vidigueira completely different. if you put this together with a collection of grapes that are really different, we are really in a different spot in Alentejo. And that's something that I really like. And that's something that I always looking for my wines. This one, it's a good example of that. It's a blend. It's probably the most traditional blend for reds in Alentejo, a part of a small percentage of Touriga, but to put together Alicante, Trincadeira, and Aragonese, it's something quite usual here in Alentejo. And in this one, you can see the big importance of Alicante Bouschet for these blends in Alentejo. It's important to say that for us, wines must be always around Portuguese grapes. It seems a little bit strange, Alicante Bouschet, but I must tell you that for me, Alicante Bouschet, it's not even a Portuguese grape, it's an Alentejo grape, for a simple reason, because Alicante, to show what really he is in terms of enologic value, needs two important things: a great number of sun hours and high temperatures, because in terms of cycle, it's the first variety in terms of bud burst. It's the last variety that we pick in the vineyard. That means that to have Alicante quite well matured, we need these conditions that we have here in Alentejo. And that's the reason, because Alicante is so different here. But it's a very good variety to blend. Here we have a wine that has some plums from Aragonese, some spicy character from Trincadeira, some exotic character from Touriga, but you can see also the influence of Alicante with the structure, the color, and the elegance. Because if you can pick Alicante in the right point, with the right production, you can normally have this elegance and this difference that makes this kind of wines a little bit different from the rest that we produce in Alentejo. The wines here in Vidigueira, they are quite elegant, quite fresh. They have a little bit of meat carpaccio that comes from the minerality of the soil, but you can feel the olive jam, you can feel a little bit of mint, and all this, it's what really makes Alicante so interesting and so different. And that's what we really like. It's to put all this together and to see how we can match everything to have at the hand something that it's completely different, but something that can give you pleasure. And that's the best thing in the world.
Wonderful, Paulo. Thank you so much. And again, I think this is for those people who are trying to familiarize themselves with the profile of an Alentejo. This is a classic wine, to your point, with the two most interesting varieties, but also a tip of the hat. What I like about what you do is that although you might bring in somebody from the outside, they're still Portuguese, right? That Touriga Nacional is not bringing in something from the outside there. And I think that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Before I open us up for questions and answers, Laura, anything you would like to add, any comments that you would like to make?
I really just enjoy this kind of huckleberry, mulberry fruit that has this red and black ripe component, but then this lift and that herbal edge of mint or tarragon. You know, you don't really expect that kind of refinement coming in some of the warmer areas. And I know that this is not the flat zone, but I'm always surprised and slightly mesmerized by Alentejo just because of that incredible balance, you know, getting that balance from cooler nights where you don't really expect that because it does get so warm here. So across the board, it's fun to see all these, but this kind of old vine option here is just really extraordinary. I'd love to try this again in another 10 years.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll have a reconvening of our the six of us and you to do it again. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Ask Li Meng to jump back in here. I'll say all my thank yous a little bit later, but I hope you all agree that this was a lovely tutored tasting of six just delicious wines from a very magic spot in the world. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I'm not tech savvy enough to follow the questions at the same time, but thank God Li Meng has been watching behind the scenes. Li Meng, if you want to parcel out our questions, if all of our winemakers and Tiago can all come back on screen and join us, that would be terrific. Li Meng, you're on mute.
Of course. Speaking of tech savvy, for those of you who do have questions, feel free to drop it in Q&A or in the chat, and I will definitely get them answered. I'm going to start out with the very first Antão, and maybe for all three of the first three white wines, just to compare your acidity. Pedro, what was the acidity on the Antão of your first wine?
6 grams per liter, around that.
Great. And
pH 3.10.
Great. And then I think just to be fair, if everybody else, Dora with the blend, if you know the acidity, as well as I think Nuno as well. And with the text sheets are in the Thinkific platform. But if Jay, if you have a follow-up question to acidity, you can definitely ask. So Dora, what was your acidity for the Rubrica?
It was 3.6.
Great. And Nuno?
Around 6 also, like Pedro. Yeah, 6, but the pH is a little bit higher, so I think it's below around 3.2, 3.3. Yeah.
Awesome. Here's a question from Dave McIntyre. This is a question for Sandra. Is José Roquette related to the Roquettes from Quinta do Crasto in Douro?
You're on mute, Sandra.
I'm here. Yes, they are brothers. José Roquette and Jorge Roquette. So José Roquette from Herdade Esporão, from Esporão company is brother from Jorge Roquette from Quinta do Crasto.
So was the family originally from Douro and moved down, or?
They are original from north of Portugal, but that's completed. They have these two different projects, because José Roquette, the owner from Esporão owner, bought Esporão in the early 70s, and about Crash is a different history that is related with Jorge Roquette, his brother.
Great.
Or one of these brothers. They are more than two.
Big Portuguese family. It is amazing, Evan, how many people have said, I don't come from Alentejo, I come from the north.
As I said before, it's amazing that there's anybody left in the north at this point in time.
Yeah. So, yeah, and on that note, here's a great question from Alexandra, and I think if the different winemakers can weigh in, how do you feel about Bordeaux planting Portuguese grapes now? What does that mean for the Portuguese winemaker?
Dead silence.
I don't, maybe I should call names because they're all dying to get in here.
And so they are getting smart.
You go, Paulo. You go.
Let's start with Paulo, for sure.
They are getting smart at this moment. They are discovering that here in Alentejo, they can find a lot of good things.
Are they coming to you for help, Paulo? Or are you helping?
No, they don't need. They have good people to work there. But, well, what they are discovering is that here in Alentejo, we have a lot of grapes that supports quite well all these changes that are occurring. And in fact, this is something quite interesting. Even here in Alentejo, we are discovering that we need to probably go back to some varieties that we thought that they were not so interesting, but in fact, they were so important in the middle of the 20th century for some reason. And today we are discovering that the reason is simple. They are quite well adapted to this hot climate and these conditions. And I believe that what people in Bordeaux, it's not only Bordeaux, it's all over the world, people are trying to get good grapes that can support these changes. And of course, in a hot region like Alentejo, they can find a lot of good options, certainly.
Tiago, do you want to weigh in?
No, I agree with all the things that Paul said.
I think it's amazing, Tiago, Caravana. For many years, we talk about how hard it is to educate the American consumer to pronounce these grapes, and now global warming is forcing them to know them anyways. I just want to throw the question out there. We talked a little bit about the sustainability and the measures that Esporão is doing. For everybody, you know, what are, as we go down the line, what are the things that your winery, your vineyards are doing about global warming? And what do you see with the trends in Portugal? Go for it.
Should I start?
Sure. Let's start with Esporão. Yes.
There's so many to do. So I can say like 2 or 3 most important things, not the most important things, but important. So first thing that we were talking about, just find the proper grape varieties, the most well adapted grape varieties to our climate. Essential. Next thing, of course, is just management, water management, because it's more and more hard to maintain water in soils, and in this we feel this lack of water year after year, so I think at least these 2, but my fellows can probably just complete.
Yeah, absolutely. Pedro, maybe I'll go to you next. I do remember going to Alentejo in July myself, and when I walked out of Muxal, I think, their winery, it felt like a brick oven was sitting on me. It was so hot. So what do you guys do with global warming, with water, the lack of water?
So we are lucky in Rocim and most producers from the Alentejo that the Alentejo Wine Commission and big part of the credit goes to Dora that started the sustainability program for the Alentejo region. So we have a lot of we are trying to fill all the demands of this program in terms, like Sandra said, in terms of water management is one of the most important thing for us. So most of our water we can recycle now. We are now also in terms of energy. We are in the 4th phase of the solar panels installation, and in the 6th phase we'll be independent in terms of energy. So a lot of things. It's a never-ending job, a never-ending story. But like I said, we are very lucky. We are all integrated in this program of sustainability that Dora started with the CVR some years ago.
And can Tiago or Dora, can you explain what the eventual goal of the program is for everyone?
Which is the Wines of Alentejo Sustainability Program, or WASP is its acronym.
I don't want to go over Tiago. Tiago will excuse me, and thank you, Pedro. You're very kind, very nice. I think it was. It's funny how it started, but and it's also funny that we're talking to the US, because when I started at the commission in 2008, 2 years after, I asked for the California Wine Institute for help. Can you imagine that? Do you know who helped us to establish the Alentejo Wine Program for sustainability? Was actually the California Wine Institute. And I really thank them for that, because they were very open and they shared everything. They went to Portugal, they came in and they made presentations, and they helped us to thrive through chaos, which was what we had by then, with the warm weather and everything. So it took us like 2-3 years to establish a program, which is similar to the Californian, but adapted to the program in Alentejo, because conditions are different. Although landscape sometimes is very similar, many times I can compare the landscape of Alentejo to Sonoma, because it's like rolling hills. It's not flat, it's rolling hills, like the weather conditions, the influence of the Atlantic, it's sometimes the influence of Pacific, and so on. So it was a very good start. And now there is over 100 members on the Alentejo Wine Program. and we all take, and me now as a producer and Louise as a producer, we all take good advantage of this, because the conditions in Alentejo are very difficult. I mean, we do not have water. I mean, we have a huge lake, which is the Alqueva Lake, but the access to water and how we manage the water, and it's not just the water, it's also the other resources, how we manage sustainability in our own wineries, in the vineyard and so on. It's everything, it's biodiversity, it's all the whole program. Yeah. And that makes a huge difference, so not just sometimes just the water, but also how we balance nature within our vineyards.
Yeah.
And
Tiago, sorry, I just want to make sure that I get Tiago's perspective also on the people and the labor. Tiago, there's a question here on how the sustainability initiatives at WASP, do they address people and labor as well?
Yes, we address the three main chapters of sustainability, which are the environmental one, the environment. The second is economics. They're linked, because when you save water, when you save energy, you're also saving money. So they're completely linked. And the third one is social aspect. Social aspect wasn't the first to be implemented, of course, but now it's being more and more important. And some producers are doing great things.
Great. I hope the winemakers are reading the chat, because you have some amazing comments about how much people love your wines, wines that they'll never forget. Last question, Evan, and then we're going to go back to the slides. This is really interesting. You guys are working together. I can tell our audience that honestly, Tiago and the team over at Alentejo are some of the most pleasant clients we've ever had at Full Circle. Are the winemakers, this is a question from Alexandra, are the winemakers in Alentejo sharing information with each other, like in Oregon, in Russian River? Is there a wine festival every year? I think the subtext of the question is that, are you cooperative with each other?
Okay, may I start with that?
Please.
Okay, so like I said, I'm not from the Alentejo, and I came here like 9 years ago. So when I started here at Malhadinha, I get to know Pedro Ribeiro. That time he was working with Luis at the Grosh, and well, because also Malhadinha and Grosh were quite close from each other. It's like a 10 minute drive. So, and we all know each other. Okay, we know everyone. We exchange ideas. We drink a lot of wine together. We have dinners together. So yeah, we talk a lot, and we discuss a lot, and basically it's not a closed environment here in Alentejo. We talk a lot, okay, and
yeah, that's helpful.
A lot of wines, that's for sure. But we don't have a festival. I think we don't do.
We have an Amphora wine day.
We had a Amphora day. I've been there.
Amphora day. That sounds like a cool reason to get together.
I thought there was that summer festival that's on the square also. Is that not a wine festival, Tiago?
Yeah, that's Everwine. It's a local
okay.
event.
Evan and I were talking about selling wine popsicles one year in Evora in the summer because it was so hot. We thought we were going to make a bundle doing that.
And then we decided to do Master the World instead, but we really were on that idea for a long time.
That went away.
Speaking about collaboration, the sustainability program is also important in that matter. The collaboration is huge. We do workshops in the producers with the best practices, and all the other producers are invited to come and learn. And so in sustainability, the collaboration is a very important aspect.
Oh,
Tiago.
Only to say that I'm from Alentejo. I'm from the heart of Alentejo. Maybe I'm the only one. and to say that I study with Sandra and Pedro in the same university where we are colleagues. So sometimes we are together and another friends, and we make a lot of dinners with thematic wines and everything. I think we are good friends here.
Absolutely. Evan, I think back to you. And for those of you who can join us, if it's not too late for dinner, please feel free to join. In the chat, you'll see our Zoom information for the happy hour. Evan.
Yep, here we go. We just did this Q&A. We just did that. All right, so the last slide we have is just a big thank you, as this is our final session. I want to say not only muito obrigado, obrigadísimo to our speakers, to our panelists, to Laura, to Tiago, to the CVR Wines of Alentejo, but I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of our constituents, all of our incredible delegation who have been with us and joined us off and on as for the sessions they can attend live or afterwards on recording over the past weeks. It's been really terrific. It's been a learning experience for everybody. As this was the first year we took the entire program online into Zoom land as opposed to being together in person. It may have ended, as we said, but the learning is not. Our next Master of the World webinar is this upcoming Monday. For those of you who want to join us, that will be led by myself and two of the other geriatric master sommeliers, Madeline Trefon and Tim Gazer. If you want to join us on at 1 o'clock on Monday, go to mtwwines.com and register whether you have the kit or not. It's a very unique program this time. I'm not going to share and spoiler alert the whole thing, but it's a very unique theme for us as opposed to the 10 others that we've done prior. And I'm just going to say we're going to be now connecting to the happy hour, happy half hour. There's a link in the chat room, or there's a separate link that you were sent. And Li-Meng, why don't you get the last word in, and I'll see people in the chat room.
I just want to say thank you to our team, Evan. You know, production days did not stop here at the winery, and everyone's just kind of listening. And Becky would be on production line listening to the conference along with Hannah. And Paige right now is here at the warehouse too. So I just want to thank our team, and especially to Andrea DeLugas. Wasn't gonna forget her, Evan. Andrea, if you don't mind sharing yourself on video while the room is bigger. I just hats off to you for your perseverance. I know that this has been a very trying year for us to figure out, can we go virtual? Oh my gosh, how do we get, you know, hundreds and hundreds of kits made? So thank you, Andrea, for all that.
Absolutely.
Of course. Happy everyone was able to join us. So thank you all so much. It's been quite the year, but we're happy we're able to pull this off for y'all virtually.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll hope to see everyone at the happy hour if you can join us, and we'll continue the conversation there.
Thanks. Thank you again, everybody, so much. And até a próxima, as they would say in Portugal.